As the United States tried to contain communism, their relationship with the Soviet Union was tense. Lyndon B. Johnson took over after President Kennedy was shot, and he was looking for a reason to go to war. Secretary of State at that time was Robert McNamara, and he was in charge of U.S. policy in Vietnam. Both Lyndon B. Johnson and McNamara would orchestrate a series of events to trick the United States into going to war. In 1964, the USS Maddox and the Sea Turner Joy maneuvered into North Vietnamese water in an area called the Gulf of Tonkin. As the U.S. reported, the Maddox was fired upon by a Vietnamese ship. Later, a study by the NSA showed that actually it was the USS Maddox that had fired first. McNamara and Lyndon B. Johnson then asked Congress to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. This authorized President Johnson to take all necessary measures to repel any armed attack against the U.S. So it extended the president's powers in this situation so that he could do whatever was necessary in order to protect the United States against an armed attack. Johnson used this to retaliate and start the Vietnam War without congressional approval. And the United States began Operation Rolling Thunder. This was a massive bombing campaign in Vietnam. This was the hope that if the United States bombed the North Vietnamese heavily, they would quickly want the war to end. They would want to make peace. But this idea failed for various reasons. The commander of the U.S. forces in Vietnam was William Westmoreland. He ordered search and destroy missions on the ground in Vietnam. So this meant that he would send soldiers into an area and advise them on what it was they were looking for and what they needed to destroy. The U.S. used the body count, in other words, the number of casualties, as a measure of success in Vietnam. This, too, would fail for various reasons. These are some photographs from Vietnam. On the left, you see they're trying to pull a soldier out of one of those booby traps. The U.S. used several chemicals in Vietnam, one of which was the controversial napalm bomb. This was a sticky, highly flammable gasoline that, when it was dropped to the earth, would explode and burn anything that it touched. It was very controversial because, of course, it burned extensively and was used against people. The other chemical that was used was Agent Orange. Agent Orange was used to defoliate or peel the leaves off trees and burn them. And this was used because the vegetation in the jungles was very thick. It was very difficult for soldiers to see what they were doing, where they were going, and also to see the enemy. So they would spray Agent Orange to help them navigate better in the terrain. Agent Orange caused severe birth defects and also resulted in depression and emotional trauma in veterans that were exposed to it. On that unpleasant note, we will end this video. In the next video, we'll talk about the reaction of Americans at home to the Vietnam War.